Hello and welcome to Thursdays on the Stoop. Today we have Writing About the Arts with Catherine Ricketts. Just a little bit about her. Catherine Ricketts is a writer and musician whose work focuses on the arts, grief, joy, and spirituality. Her writing appears in the Kenyon Review Online, the Plowshares blog, Image Journal, and many more. Her first book about motherhood and artistic practice is forthcoming from Broadleaf Books. And alongside her writing, Ricketts has maintained a vibrant career supporting the work of other artists at organizations like WXPN, Fringe Arts, and the Philadelphia Museum of Arts. So I'm going to let Catherine take it away. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Taylor. It's so good to be with all of you today. Thank you for taking some time out of your afternoon to join Thursdays on the Stoop. A quick plug, the Blue Stoop has a number of different co-writing sessions like this every Thursday, and then courses that you can take that are longer duration than just a one-off like this. So I invite you to check out the Blue Stoop's programming on their website. I think it's bluestoop.org. Is that right, Taylor? I think she dropped those in the chat.
Yes, they're all in the chat, but it's bluestoop.org. Yep.
Yeah. So keep an eye out. They work with a ton of Philadelphia writers and writers from around the country who are doing amazing things to provide programming that helps us to keep up with our writing practices day to day. So super grateful for what Blue Stoop does. Super grateful to be here with you all today. As Taylor said, I do a lot of writing about the arts, and I've worked at Philadelphia's art institutions supporting other artists in their work. And I just today handed in the final edits on my first book, which is about motherhood and artistic practice. It looks at women artists who have children and how motherhood and art are at play and at odds in their lives. So I'm feeling exhausted and elated and very happy to move from that into a conversation with you all about how we write about the arts. So our session today is about this. The art critic's task is a paradox: to translate into words works that were created to say what words cannot. We're going to do a little bit of writing about this work, Hydrangea Spring Song, which given the time of year, I think I was just really feeling. But we'll sit with this for a little bit while we take some time to introduce ourselves. I would love to hear from each of you. If you would like to, you can turn on your camera and unmute yourself and share your name, what you write, and if you can think of a work of art that you encountered recently that changed you. We'll do that. Let's start with Susan Richards.
I do memoir writing and a bit of fiction, and I'm primarily was first a visual artist. And oddly enough, I can't think of a work of art which recently changed me, because I'm constantly looking at so much of it. I can't think of any one thing. Maybe some of my own work. Certainly that has changed me, and it's changed how I write and what I write.
Yeah. Thanks, Susan. Ava Bruni.
So my name is Ava. I write mostly fiction, like poetry and short stories, and I can't really think of anything that I've seen recently that has changed me. Sorry.
Thanks, Ava. Abigail Erickson.
Hello. So I'm Abigail. My professor is actually Dr. Zenner, and she recommended that I come to this today because I'm writing an art analysis for her final project. So that's why I'm here. I don't really write about it usually, but just here to learn.
I love that. So cool. Tell Dr. Zenner I said hi.
Will do.
Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. I primarily write in poetry. I used to do a lot of ekphrastic poetry and life has gone away, but I'm trying to bring myself back into that practice. But yeah, a lot of poetry. I try to experiment with different forms as well. And a piece of art that I've encountered that's moved me recently is Rose B. Simpson's installation Dream House at the Fabric Workshop and Museum in Philly. Just one of those pieces that made me really just like stop at my place. Actually, everything that's on right now at the Fabric Workshop was very halting. Yeah.
So cool. Thanks, Alex. Ikra, and pardon me if I mispronounce.
Hi, I like to write poetry, and a work of art that really moved me recently was a short film called Blue by the artist Laura Magnuson, and I saw it at an exhibit.
Where was that?
It was at the University of Waterloo Art Gallery, but it's definitely been at other galleries.
Wow, cool. Cass?
Hi, I'm Cass. I'm in southeastern British Columbia. I have done a lot of visual arts, but not so much recently. I write poetry and creative nonfiction. And I went to the local high school art show last evening and just amazed at the talent and creativity of the young people, and kind of got a burst of motherly pride, like these are my local kids. So yeah.
How cool. Andalyn.
Hi, I'm Andalyn. I primarily write lyric essays, and I wrote one this winter that included a lot of art criticism of Dutch paintings. And that was what intrigued me to come to your workshop. And a work of art I saw recently that moved me was a performance in Philly at the Icebox Project space called Always the Hour. And it was a collaborative dance and installation piece made by the artist Annie Wilson.
Cool. Thanks, Andalyn.
Yeah.
Marge.
I live in Fort Collins, Colorado, but I lived in Philly for 12 years, so it's always nice to hear mention of anything in Philly and to reconnect every Thursday. I write poetry and am also working on an episodic memoir. And I saw Vance Kirkland Museum is a Denver museum. Vance Kirkland has a Cosmos series that really helped ground me in his consciousness, and he was kind of ahead of his time in terms of consciousness. So that really rocked my world.
Thanks, Marge. Darcy.
Hi, I'm in Burlington, New Jersey, outside Philly, and I signed up for this course because I write reviews for Thinking Dance, which is a Philly-based online publication. But personally, I write poetry and memoir-based essays. And I was going to say Dale Chihuly in terms of art, because I'm a big fan of his. But most recently, we were in Morocco, and we were at the house of the Consulate General in Casablanca, and his private art collection blew me away, and it was a lot of African art. So that my most recent experience.
That sounds pretty magical. Thanks, Darcy. Tali.
Hey, I'm Tali. I generally write like creative nonfiction and prose poetry stuff. And I recently got the opportunity to work a little bit with Yasmin Hernandez, who works in Puerto Rico with like bioluminescence, kind of the being inspired by bioluminescence in the natural world and kind of making art about cultural bioluminescence, and using black background and bright colors on black background. Yeah, it was awesome. So.
Oh, cool. Thanks. And Jennifer, I think you're last.
Hi, Catherine. Thank you. And sorry for leaving my camera off. My connection's a little shaky. I'm joining you from Macon, Georgia. I'm a visual artist. I work in collage and I write poetry as well. I'm interested in connecting poetry with art, or lyric verse, lyric prose in art. And then one of the a recent work of art that I saw was here in my hometown at the Museum of Arts and Sciences. An artist, an African-American male artist named Alfred Conti. He's a painter, he's a figure painter, and there were a handful of pieces in the show, in his collection, that spoke to gentrification. And I had never, it blew me away that he was able to figure portraits, it's like figure in landscape, to convey this idea of erasure through gentrification. So it kind of blew my mind. So it was great to see something, so phenomenal right here in my own backyard. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Awesome. Well, it's really cool to hear how many different locations are represented in our group today, how many different genres and how many different approaches to visual performing and literary arts we have here. So awesome group. It's so nice to meet each of you. So the capacity to surface emotion is one of art's unique virtues. And as each of you thinks about the artwork that you shared with us, I'm sure your interaction with it was somehow emotionally evocative. I can't think of how many times my throat has gone tight for a folk song's timbre, or my heart has raced over a certain shade of blue. The blue in this image is particularly, oh, I'm wearing it also. Just somehow, like, it gets me every time, and it has an emotional resonance for me through the sensory experience of it. And I couldn't tell you why exactly. The experience and experiences like that resist explanation. Art has the capacity to bypass our biases with expressions of beauty or the grotesque that appeal to our sensing and feeling selves, rather than using language to appeal to logic. As Victor Hugo said about music, music expresses that which cannot be said and on which it is impossible to be silent. And so the art critic's task is a paradox: to translate into words works that were created to say what words cannot. In fact, many artists expressly set out to defy the limits of language. And as we go through our time today, we are going to use Olivia Lang as a thinking partner. In her book, Funny Weather, Art in an Emergency, she's particularly interested in artists who set out to defy language. And one of those artists is Agnes Martin. Agnes Martin's work is notoriously perplexing. It's abstract art that is really spare. As you can see in these images, like, it's incredibly subtle. And Olivia Lang writes, "It isn't easy to catch the working of these paintings in words. They aren't to be read, but rather responded to. Enigmatic triggers for a spontaneous upwelling of pure emotion." So how does the critic make reading about art worth our while when, as Olivia Lang puts it, the paintings are the thing? We're going to look at a couple of techniques that Olivia Lang uses to particular effect that we can use in our own writing. We'll look at 2 different techniques, and we'll have 3 different writing prompts. The first technique that I want to talk about is aesthetic intrigue. So art, I think, can be one of the most persuasive forms of communication. And as I said before, it doesn't persuade using logic to address our intellect. It somehow persuades through the senses. And so the critic's task, the critic is probably less effective telling us what the art means than they are somehow conveying the aesthetic intrigue of the artwork. We can replicate the emotional potency of a work by telling people what it sounds like, looks like, if it's somehow sensory, what it feels like, what is happening in your senses when you encounter it. If an artwork persuades by its aesthetic intrigue, then this approach to criticism has the capacity to move forward the persuasion that the art itself begins. So rather than telling people what an artwork means, we want to bring them into the sensory experience of encounter. And this is especially true if you're writing about work that someone is not going to be able to encounter themselves. So if you're not writing where the artwork is going to be side by side and they can have their own interaction with it, you really want to do everything that you can to bring them into the sensory experience of the performance or the work of visual art or whatever it is. When you stay on the surface, just really looking solely at sensory experience, you make room for each reader's unique emotional response to the work. You let them respond to it in a way that's instinctive to them. And so the force of the work is not lost. So I want to spend 10 minutes sitting with Alma Thomas's Hydrangea Spring Song. This is a work that's on view at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It's in their permanent contemporary art collection, and it's one of my favorite works. It's big, 6 feet. I would recommend that in the next 10 minutes you spend maybe 4 minutes just being with the work. And then spend the rest of the time really focusing on what this work does to our senses. What does it look like? What are its figures, its colors? And in this writing session, try to stay away from any interpretation. Just really stay on the surface. So we are going to write until 4:31. Go. We'll write for 1 more minute. All right. If you're on to something, I hope you'll return to it later. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how important it is to convey the sensory or aesthetic intrigue of an artwork. That's not to say that we shouldn't layer in biographic details about the artist, technical research about, did she use a single pigment for this artwork, and just play with layering it on versus leaving it light, or did she use multiple colors? What kind of brush did she use? All those kinds of things are can enrich arts writing. How does this work fit in with what came before it and its contemporaries? How does it fit in with the bigger picture of Alma Thomas's body of work? But if we fail to capture the aesthetic intrigue or the sensory experience of it, then we don't give readers real access to the work itself. The second technique that I want to talk about, it has to do not with the sensory experience of a work, but with the emotional experience of a work or the emotional atmosphere. You may have noticed that as you spent time with Hydrangea Spring Song, you felt excited. You felt like this was like confetti thrown in the air. Or maybe you felt overwhelmed, like this was all the clutter on your desk. Maybe as you sat with it, your emotional experience of it changed and deepened. I found myself, the emotional experience of it for me was the excitement of sitting with it and beginning to notice little surprises in the forms, like, oh, that looks like an exclamation point, and that looks like a letter, and I wonder if there's a code in here. So the emotional experience for me was one of curiosity and excitement. Maybe it wasn't that for you, but whatever your emotional response was to it, that's valid, and that is worth bringing readers along in. So another thing that can be really powerful in arts writing is to recreate the emotional experience of your encounter with the work, not by telling readers using emotion words necessarily. So you might not say, like, this is an exciting artwork, but by creating an emotional experience in the writing itself. And I want to give you an example of how Olivia Lang does this really well. So this is an artwork by Rachel Kneebone. I'll let you just take a minute to take in this work. And this is what Olivia Lang says about Rachel Kneebone's surreal porcelain sculptures. Kneebone builds towers, or maybe pits, of body parts, hundreds upon thousands of elegantly extended, gleaming legs, triumphant and appalling. You look and see a flower. You look again and see a cock. What are these excrescences? That might be mineral or animal or vegetable, that might be melted wax or human hands. What Lang does in this short passage, I think, is pretty powerful and exemplary. She invites us into the viewing experience, and she does this using a couple of technical, like, writerly tricks. She uses a second person. You look, you look. By doing that, she puts us, the reader, in the experience of viewing. And remember, as readers are reading her prose, they can't see this image beside it. She captures the visual ambiguity of these shapes by repeating the word or. That might be mineral or animal or vegetable, melted wax or human hands. As I encounter this artwork, I too am like, what am I looking at here? And Olivia Lang, through her writing, gives us that moment of encounter. Like, say you were in a gallery, you might do a double take. Her use of the word or again and again helps us to do, as readers, helps us to do that double take. She also uses extravagant language, hundreds upon thousands of elegantly extended gleaming legs. She could have just said hundreds of elegantly extended gleaming legs, but that layering, hundreds upon thousands, there's something of her prose that is analogous to the visual experience of looking at this artwork. And so that's something I'm always seeking to do in my writing about arts. How can the tone or the tricks that I use in my language somehow mimic the experience of looking at the artwork? So when I read Olivia Lang's writing about this, I feel like it's as if I am up close with this fleshy porcelain. I feel at once squeamish and seduced. Suddenly I'm thinking about the human body, and I'm rattled by the violence in the news that deems the human body replaceable or disposable. But I'm also somehow all fired up about the beauty and the dignity of the human form. And all that happened because of the way that Lang writes about this very strange, but somehow lovely artwork. And Rachel Kneebone's whole body of work is like this. It's really evocative. So together, our next writing prompt is going to be to sit with this fun work, Dorothea Tanning's Birthday, and write about the artwork, seeking to bring your reader into the experience of encounter, somehow bringing them into the emotional atmosphere of the work. And I want you to, again, to take the first few minutes of our time to just sit with this. Let it work on you. Notice your bodily response to it. Notice if you do any double takes. Notice how the artwork works on you. And then see if there's a way in your prose or poetry to bring the reader into that same experience. We'll write for 10 minutes until 4:48. Go. We'll write for a little less than a minute. Okay. The critic Clent Brooks coined the term heresy of paraphrase. Heresy of paraphrase. And he used this term to warn against abstracting a poem from the experience of reading a poem by trying to explain its meaning. Like Olivia Lang said, the painting is the thing. There's the joke, looking at an artwork, well, what does it mean? For so many artworks, the experience of sitting with the work is the meaning. And so I love arts writing that just seeks to bring a reader into the experience of the work by focusing on its surface and atmosphere, doing the best that we can with the written word to allow readers their own experience of the sensory material. I want to end with listening to a song together. I will put this in the chat because I think it's easiest for everyone to just listen on their own devices muted rather than for me to play it through Zoom. I don't think that will work well. You're also welcome to use this time. So the prompt here again will be to listen to, this is from the new Feist album. This is a song called Calling All the Gods. Listen to Feist's Calling All the Gods, and then write to bring readers into the atmosphere of the song. You're also welcome to use this time for a personal project. If there's something that you're going to have to write like 5 good sentences summarizing a work of art in an upcoming piece of writing that you're working on, you could use this time to just try to write a couple of good sentences using a couple of the tricks that we learned. So we'll listen to Feist, and then I'll have a couple of words to wrap us up after 5 minutes of writing. I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to listen on my own device. You can listen on your own devices. We'll start now. All right. If you all want to bring your videos back on, say hello and goodbye. I'm going to put my email address and my Instagram handle into the chat. I would love to hear from you. If you have questions, if we had had more time, I would have loved to do a Q&A and more conversation with you all, because I think I could learn a lot from you too. It sounds like each of you does some of this writing in your own right and in your own work. And so yeah, if you want to continue the conversation, please be in touch. If you liked anything that you wrote and you want to send it to me, send it to me. I'm closing with this image because I think it's gorgeous. This is an American, a young American artist who's living in the UK, Catherine Repko, and I love her work. But that image is my thank you image. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Please remember to check out the Blue Stoop's other offerings. If you're new to the Blue Stoop community, there's such richness in what they share. So thank you.
Thank you
Taylor,
all so much
word
for
from
joining
you.
us. Yep, thank you. And stop.